As if it wasn't clear enough to everyone watching what's going on in Iowa that this is a sham election, Tom Perez comes out and puts the goddamn cherry on top. So this story is breaking just now. After this debacle has been going on since Monday night, the Iowa caucuses and the full results have not been coming out. After the DNC for days now have decided to selectively release results from precincts that favor Pete Buttigieg while conveniently leaving out the precincts that Bernie Sanders did the best in. After the DNC verifiably changed the vote count in some of the caucus precincts in Iowa. And this isn't just conjecture, this isn't a conspiracy theory. The supervisor of elections in Black Hawk County contradicted the results that the Democratic Party released for that county. And then after that, they had to pull the results. They had to retract the results that they just released and said there had been a minor error and we need to correct them and then republish the results for that county. And it happened in many other precincts in Iowa. Verified with photographed, documented proof that they changed the votes. After they've been doing that for days at this point, it started on Tuesday when they released 62% of the results from the Iowa caucuses. Then by the end of Tuesday night, they had 75% of the results out. Then at some point on Wednesday, they had put out another 4% of the results. And by Wednesday night, it was at 97%. But by the results that they were putting out by Wednesday night at 97% had closed the lead that the media was fixated on between Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders in the state delegate count. Pete Buttigieg, even though Bernie Sanders had always been up in the popular vote in the first count and also in the realignment, the second count, Bernie Sanders had won both popular votes the entire time he was up. In the national delegates that would go to the Democratic convention at the end of the primary, Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders had been tied virtually since they started putting out results. And the only metric where Pete Buttigieg had any sort of lead on Bernie Sanders was this irrelevant and inconsistent state delegate lead, where even though Bernie Sanders has had the popular vote, Pete Buttigieg somehow had a lead on the state delegate. Well, now, here on Thursday, they were preparing to release the rest of the results, the full 100% of the results from the Iowa caucuses. Bernie Sanders, like I said, from last night, had closed the gap from the state delegates lead to less than 0.1%. Now, here we are, 97% of the votes out, or results out. The remaining 3% are from precincts and caucuses where Bernie Sanders did overwhelmingly. Now Tom Perez comes out and puts out this ludicrous tweet. Let me read it word for word. Enough is enough. In light of the problems that have emerged in the implementation of the delegate selection plan and in order to assure public confidence in the results, I am calling on the Iowa Democratic Party to immediately begin a recanvass. In a caucus, this is basically a recount, but just look at the convenient timing. Like I said, this whole debacle has been rolling out for days, selectively releasing results. Tom Perez and the DNC had been in charge since, I believe, Tuesday or Monday night. They have taken over control of reporting the results from the Iowa Democratic Party. So the DNC had been in control since Monday night. And when they were selectively releasing, took the unprecedented step of selectively releasing results from different random precincts and building this media narrative that Pete Buttigieg had a lead. When they were doing that, Tom Perez didn't think enough is enough and there's a serious problem with it. The public does not believe, they don't have any confidence in what's going on here in Iowa. So let me intervene and we have to do something to fix it. No, when they took the unprecedented step of doing that shit, Tom Perez was all on board with it. He was just fine with it, and he thought public confidence, there was no problem with public confidence. As a matter of fact, during all the scandals of the votes being changed, vote counts being changed, and the votes not lining up with the official recorded numbers from elected supervisor of elections in different counties, specifically Black Hawk County. When all of that shit was going on, Tom Perez didn't have a problem with the perception of some shady shit going on and the loss of the public confidence in the election process. No, he didn't have anything to say about that. As a matter of fact, Tom Perez hasn't said a goddamn word about Iowa since Monday night. Hasn't said a word about any of the numerous scandals that have come out from Iowa. But as Bernie Sanders, as they're about to release the numbers that show Bernie Sanders overtaking Pete Buttigieg in every single metric, the last 3%, that's when Tom Perez says, hold the show, everybody. Hold the show, everybody. What's going on in Iowa? We have to do a recount. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a recount. There shouldn't be an audit. Of course there should be an audit. Literally, they were changing the votes. So of course there should be an audit. But the fact of the matter is, they went this entire time selectively releasing numbers that made Pete Buttigieg look like he was in the lead. And now the official, the 100% of the results were going to come out and show Bernie Sanders on top. That's when he puts a stop to this. And then he says, now we're going to have to recount it. Hold on, Tom Perez. Why are you so urgently, so desperately trying to stop the count now? Because it's not like you can't it's not like you can't put out the last 3% of the results and it actually shows Bernie Sanders winning and then you could do the recount. But here's the thing. They don't want to show Bernie Sanders winning because they want to continue this cockamamie bullshit narrative that Bernie Sanders is losing to Pete Buttigieg. And the second the numbers are going to contradict them, they put an end to the releasing the results from the Iowa caucuses. This is amazing. And again, I need everybody to stop acting like this is incompetence. Stop acting like they're bungling this and like they're a bunch of buffoons who are tripping over themselves and they don't know what they're doing and they're fucking up the count. That's not what's happening. The fact that Tom Perez went out of his way urgently, and this is another thing, this was a shock to everyone. He didn't even talk to the Iowa Democratic Party before he put that tweet out. So Tom Perez is urgently trying to stop the numbers that show Bernie Sanders winning in Iowa. He wants to do everything in his power to make sure those numbers don't come out. Now he's demanding a recount. My God, Tom Perez should not be the head of the DNC. He should be removed immediately. Bernie Sanders' team needs to, because before this, Bernie Sanders' team, the strategy was this morning, he put out Tom Roca to release the final 3% that showed Bernie Sanders would come out on top. Because like I mentioned before, Bernie Sanders was keeping track of all of the different precincts in Iowa, all of the different caucuses and all the results. So he had the numbers himself, but he was waiting for the DNC to release them. And I guess today, when it was only 3% left, he decided to preempt the DNC and release those numbers. And so the strategy from Bernie Sanders' team this entire time seemed to be, especially after this morning, was, okay, it's done. We're up in Iowa. Let's just forget all this ever happened and move on to New Hampshire and move on to Super Tuesday and just keep it pushing and not make a big deal out of this. Well, now, what are they going to say? They have to bring a lawsuit. Somebody has to subpoena documents and figure out why the hell Tom Perez allowed a candidate in this race, Pete Buttigieg, to pay for an app that was supposed to record the results for the entire state primary. Somebody needs to subpoena documents and put together a paper trail of how this even happened. Somebody needs to depose everyone at the DNC who was involved in this. There need to be depositions of people at Pete Buttigieg's campaign. There need to be depositions of people at Shadow Inc., the company that created this app. They all need to be deposed under oath and in front of a camera or wherever they're going to do this. And they need to testify under oath and explain what the hell they were doing with this entire arrangement with the DNC. There needs to be answers here, and this is insane. This is insanity. Mayhem and fucking bedlam in Iowa. I don't know how Tom Perez couldn't. I don't know how anyone in their right mind can feel any level of be comfortable with Tom Perez remaining the head of the DNC throughout the primary. That is inconceivable at this point. That is inconceivable. He is doing everything in his power to undermine Bernie Sanders. As if they didn't do enough. For the last 3 days, as if the DNC didn't do enough to undercut Bernie Sanders, they allowed this narrative, they manufactured this narrative that Pete Buttigieg was up in Iowa by selectively releasing the results that favored Pete Buttigieg and leaving out the ones that would show how well Bernie Sanders is doing. They allowed this narrative to be created on Tuesday when they did that, released 62% of the vote. And then they continued to allow this, they allowed it to continue by releasing more results that bolstered Pete Buttigieg. And of course, the fact that the part that is being left out of all of this for a lot of people is they are literally changing votes. This app that was paid for by a candidate in this race was caught red-handed, photographed evidence in black and white of them changing the vote. How is anybody okay with Tom Perez being the DNC chair for another second? Look, man, I get Bernie Sanders. His personality is to take the high road and to be above the fray, but they are cheating you out in the open for the 1 millionth time. And like I said in another video, this is getting to a point where it's problematic because all of this, every time Bernie Sanders turns and looks the other way and turns a blind eye to them brazenly cheating him, he's giving them a green light to continue doing it. Tom Perez he needs to feel the fear of God. When Bernie Sanders comes out and does a full court press, scorched earth, and eviscerates the DNC and puts on blast the corruption and the fact that they are clearly tipping the scales against Bernie Sanders and for the corporatist establishment candidate in this race, just like they did in 2016. We need to air this all out. And this is what I've been saying since 2016. The DNC, the Democratic Party, got off scotch-free. There was no accountability for them rigging the election in 2016. And of course, it's not like they learned any lessons from this. The lesson they learned was, we could keep doing this because nobody's gonna check us. So you gotta stop. You gotta switch it up, Bernie. Somebody needs to be held to account for this. We need to air it all out from back in 2016. And I'm not saying do this as a rehash of 2016. Oh, Bernie would have won. Hillary Clinton would have. No. To prove the point that the DNC has a proven track record of trying to undermine this one specific candidate, Bernie Sanders. They need to relitigate exactly what we learned from the WikiLeaks in 2016, and more than that, we need to get to the bottom of what the hell is going on in Iowa, because I don't know how anyone. I always try to at least. I know that the process is rigged. I know that they cheat, and I know how dirty this all is. But I, at least for myself, and I tell other people this too, you still have to go out and vote. You still have to try to change the system. You still have to provide some pushback. But what this is showing is no matter what we do, they're going to do everything in their power, no matter how illegal it is, no matter how unethical, unprecedented, and inexcusable it is. They're going to do everything in their power to cheat you, and I don't see any end to it. So I don't know why Bernie thinks that this is just a problem that's going to resolve itself. Widespread, rampant, unrepentant corruption. I don't know why he thinks that's just going to just evaporate at some point in the Democratic Party and they're going to start running free and fair elections. That isn't going to happen until you make it happen. That isn't going to happen until somebody is held to account for the brazen, out in broad daylight cheating that they've been doing. So this is amazing. It is amazing the lengths that the party is going to cheat Bernie Sanders.